Hello and welcome to another my NT/ND marriage video. Moving on from Counsellor Terry, we had the rifle incident after that and we did split up because she had said to him that I was sensitive and she hadn't really sort of tackled the anger issues. He had since determined that how he was acting was normal and fine. And I'd said to him, this isn't going to be my normal for the rest of my life. I don't want to do this with you. And I said to him, if that's your idea of normal, you need to leave. And so he did. And we were only split up for maybe 3 months, 5 months. It happened at the start of the COVID pandemic, and so he ended up moving home because in order to see his children, he needed to live with us because the place he'd moved to wasn't close by. It wasn't in that 3 or 10 kilometre radius, whatever it was. And so he moved back in. But prior to him moving back in, we had issues with the children not wanting to actually go and stay with him or take phone calls from him and things like this because they were getting agitated with his yelling as well. They were getting to the point where having a conversation with him would end up stressing them out, and so they didn't want to have those conversations with him. And I had said to him, I think that we should see another counsellor, and by now I had found the name of somebody who specialised in ASD. And he'd said to me, the marriage is just ridiculous, it's terrible, it's a roller coaster ride, it's crappy, I don't want to do this anymore, I don't want to see a counsellor, I just want us to end. And then obviously he's moved back home and COVID's happened and he has a bit of a change of heart. Anyway, he ends up saying to me, look, I think you're right. Our marriage is something that we've worked hard at. Our whole life is something we've worked hard at. I think it would be silly of me to give it up. Let's go and see this counsellor. And so we do. Counsellor Margaret. Turns out that she has been a life changer. And I liked the fact that when we went in there, she didn't talk about our childhood and our past and all of this kind of stuff because I really just wanted to focus on the now, the anger. By now I was really, I would say very depressed at this stage. Majorly stonewalling. I had completely grey rocked, I suppose, is a new term that I've heard. I had just gotten cold and distant and started treating him like a housemate, very just friendly but withdrawn. So I wasn't very sort of flirty and huggy and kissy and romantic and, you know, attention and stuff. I just kind of backed right off. By now, to be honest, I was starting to say to myself, how long can I stay in this marriage? At what age will it be okay for me to leave before it affects the children? I'd even gotten to the point where I had started to wonder at what age will the children need to be before I could end my life and they wouldn't need me anymore. That's how dark things had become. I was really starting to feel like I can't live like this anymore. I was really glum. I've sort of lost friends. We struggle with going out and having fun and outings and things, and I was just feeling really depressed. So when we walk in to see Margaret, she sort of says, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you at? And I'm like, maybe a 2, 3, 4 at best. And she's like, oh, you know. And we start talking about things, you know. She's like, what's going on? And I talk to her about this is going on, that's going on. And I talked to her, for example, about him ignoring me for 3 days because one of the children didn't take the rubbish out. I said, you know, we've got stonewalling, we've got meltdowns, this kind of thing. And she turned to him and said, you know that type of behaviour is not normal, right? And I wanted to kiss the ground she walked on. I was like, finally somebody's telling it like it is. Nobody had ever said to him in all of the times that we'd been to see counsellors, your behaviour isn't stock standard. And because he'd always thought it was stock standard, because all men do this, he'd say, and I'm the only one who thinks that way, and I'm the only crazy woman who wants all of these needs to be met and wants him to stop being angry and everybody's rageful and, you know, I'm just too sensitive. And so I was getting really over counsellors not tackling the elephant in the room, which was his rage. So she's saying things like, this kind of behaviour isn't normal, and she says, you know that's not normal, right? And he kind of goes like this, but he looked surprised, like he had no concept of the fact that how he was behaving wasn't normal. So Margaret's been really good because she's very frank. She'll ask him things straight out. Why are you doing that? So I made a video before about the funny fan incident where I fixed his fan and he was outraged. And she explored that in our last session. She was talking about how when we had met, you know, what were the things we liked about each other. And I said to her, it's really funny you say that because when we met, he loved the fact that I was hands-on doing up my own house. But as soon as he moved in, that was a problem. Everything I did was a problem. I was mowing the lawn and he came out and started telling me how to mow the lawn, and I'd been living there for years mowing my own lawn. And it got to a point where any time I even so much as looked sideways at a tool, there he was next to me telling me how I should do it, and if I didn't listen to him he'd be outraged. And he was really bothered by my independence and how I wanted to learn how to do these things myself and, you know, learn by trial and error. And he just wanted to sort of stand there and dictate and tell me to do it all his way and such. So we started clashing, you know, almost from the get-go. And so I was explaining to Margaret that he'd liked me for being hands-on, but now that we're together, he can't stand me being hands-on. Anytime I so much as look at a tool, he's there taking it off me and showing me how to do it properly. Anyway, she asks him about that. She said, what's that about? You know, going back to the fan incident, for example. Why were you so annoyed that she was touching and fixing your fan? And he admitted to her, he said, I was worried that she'd do a better job. And so they explored that together, the two of them. And it turned out that that's kind of pretty much how he operates with all of it. He's so worried that I'm just going to be better at everything or good at everything. And maybe that makes him feel like he's not good at everything, which is super outrageous and ironic because he's like the Midas touch. Everything he touches turns to gold. He's good at everything. But he just had this sort of, from my perspective, he had this idea that I was bad at everything and crap at everything and I was hopeless and dodgy and couldn't do it, and he was the only one who could. But here he is admitting to the counsellor that he was actually worried that I would be good at everything, and that I guess made him feel threatened. Hence the anger, and you know, that's what I've been dealing with for as long as we were together. Somewhere in between Counsellor Terry and Counsellor Margaret, he came up to me and he said, I admit I've been a bully. And I don't know how he came to that conclusion. Had he been speaking to some friends? Had he just been thinking about stuff? I really don't know. And he said, I've been bullying you into doing everything my way. And I was just so relieved to hear him say that. Just wow, magical. And I'd known that for a very long time. But it was really good of him to say that. And so we have talked about that in the counselling sessions as well with Margaret. And she's now working with him one-on-one to get to the bottom of what it is that is driving his anger. And all I want to do is just all hail the mighty Margaret, you know. Finally, somebody is addressing the elephant in the room, the main things that have been our issue. Because yes, it's kind of hard when you live with somebody who doesn't really want to interact with you the way that you do, or as often as you do. It's not that he doesn't necessarily want to have in-depth conversations with me, but he's not very good at doing that, so it's not something that I should even expect, and so I don't. So what I'm trying to say is there's a number of his Aspie issues that are just straight up there. They're not going to be changed. They can't be fixed. They are what they are. However, his anger was really the thing that was just breaking me. I was just getting so over it. And not in the sense that I'm breaking and crumbling and sitting in a corner. It was really just making me dislike who he was, especially since he didn't yell at me in front of others, which of course came up in the counselling sessions. So I'm there saying to Margaret, he can clearly control himself because he is controlling himself. He's not doing this to me in front of anyone, ever, ever. And so I said to her, so he has a choice, and he's deliberately making a choice to yell at me. And this was the main thing that had been problematic with me and him from the very start, that no counsellor had addressed. No counsellor had sat down with him and said, why are you so angry? What is going on with you? And of course he would have turned around and said, it's her. You know, she's annoying me. That's what's making me angry. But Margaret knows that there's something deeper than that. She had said to us, anger is the outward manifestation of other things. So for example, if we bring up the issue of him raging at us because my son had got an email saying he hadn't done some schoolwork, there's a feeling behind that. And this is what Margaret was talking with him about. There's a feeling behind that. What are you feeling? And he says, fear, worry. Okay, what are you fearful of? What are you worried about? That our son's going to fail and have to repeat a year because he's doing badly during COVID lockdown. Okay, that's the bottom of it. The anger is just the outward manifestation of that because somehow you feel that being angry is going to make it that those worries and fears go away. So she said what you really need to do is address those worries and fears in a safe, a sort of respectable adult manner. And then we can get to the bottom of it. For example, I had spoken to his teachers who said everybody's doing badly during COVID lockdown. Your children are actually doing okay compared to others. There is no drama. But because my husband's coming up to us raging, we're not getting that conversation. We're not getting to be able to speak to him in any kind of way because he's just rageful. And so we're this all scurrying, you know, running to our rooms and locking him out and things because we can't get through to him. We can't talk to him. He's not listening to us. He doesn't want to hear it. He just is feeling worried and fearful and then outwardly raging. So Margaret has been amazing at getting him to understand that there's something behind the rage and that there's better ways to deal with things. In fact, we're not sorting anything out because of the rage. The rage is so extreme that we're all just becoming really distant and starting to avoid him. And she did talk about the children and how they're starting to avoid him, and he did get a little bit teary then because he's always wanted to be a good dad. He's always wanted to be liked. I mean, he wants to be loved by me as well. Everybody, I suppose, fundamentally wants to be loved. And you hear a lot of talk from partners who are with people on the spectrum, and they'll say that their partners don't love them, their partners don't care, their partners have no feelings, and they really feel that their partner doesn't love them and hasn't married them out of love, but married them out of necessity or getting their needs met. For example, if he can't cook or clean and he gets married to somebody who cooks and cleans for him, bonus. This is great, he's loving life, right? So my husband wanted to be loved. He wanted to be admired by his family. He wanted to do right by us. He wanted to have a good relationship with his children. So when she talked about how his behaviour is alienating him from his children, he did feel sad about that. And then he tried to improve, which I think is good. That was when he went up to one of the children and started sort of doing his routine. And I don't know what the child's response was, but hubby changed his attitude partway through the conversation and started talking nicely. And that was what I had always wanted, always from the beginning. You can raise your issues. Everybody's got issues. It's not that his issues don't matter because he's on the spectrum. It's not that because he's on the spectrum he has this ridiculously overwhelming amount of issues. I mean, that is a factor, don't get me wrong. he's got this massive list of needs that I don't meet, and by that he means requests that I don't follow. He'll put in an idea and I'll say, yeah, I hear you, but I'm going to do it my way, and he gets angry. So we have had a lot of that. But there are a lot of needs of his that we have been meeting. We've been working very hard to try and be the kinds of people that he needs us to be. And we just needed him to focus on that and see that and appreciate that and just be respectful and loving towards his family, because we are really trying to go out of our way to be good people. None of us are awful, I don't think. None of us have this kind of bitchy, asshole sort of ways about us. And I'm just putting that out there anyway, because I know that some people get into relationships and they bring their toxicity to it. You know, mind games, passive aggression, belittling, name calling. You know, people do these things. And I always felt that he should have been a little bit more grateful for the fact that I don't do that, and I've raised the children not to do that. And that's not the kind of life or household I want to live in. And so we don't have a lot of that kind of toxicity going around. And yeah, we've all got our faults, everybody does, but I was trying to be respectful because I wanted respect. And to me, yelling at somebody is disrespectful, and it's always been the thing that has bothered me the absolute most about this relationship. So the fact that we're now dealing with this counsellor she's dealing with his anger, she's delving into the cause. For example, through her, I found out that he had been bullied quite a lot at school. And that in itself is fascinating, because he told me that one or two things had happened. And I was thinking, yeah, they're pretty awful. But lucky you escaped most of the bullying. That's what I was thinking. I had no idea that it was worse than it was. And I didn't openly say that to him about the bullying. I just listened to his stories. But it turns out that he was bullied quite a lot, and it had actually affected him. And so it's good for him to address those things, come to terms with them, work through them, just all of the things that make him angry, try to figure out what's triggering the anger and then not being angry, you know. And that's hard for somebody who's been as angry as often as he has. I mean, he had to have been doing this when he was younger, before he met me. Somehow he learned that this is what you do in a relationship and it's normal. I mean, he's been saying that for years. But I just wanted him to figure out where it was coming from and address that and learn to let go of that anger. Learn to express your ways in healthier ways. Be respectful. As Tom Cruise says, put your manners back in. So Counsellor Margaret has asked us for updates, and she'd said, how am I feeling now? And I said, I'm probably about a 6 or 7 these days. And she said, oh, that's really cool. She said, what would make it a 10? And I said to her, a 10 is an impossibility. I mean, for a starter, nobody's marriage is perfect. And I'm dealing with somebody who can't meet my needs, so I don't think that I would ever be able to achieve a 10. And that might seem a little bit pessimistic and why stay and all of that kind of thing. But like I said, no marriage is perfect. And I have to find other ways to fulfill my own happiness. But Margaret also did say that she's been quite impressed with how open hubby is to the process. Counsellors obviously get a lot of people who are shut down and combative and 100% not interested in being there or bettering themselves. A lot of people go into counselling sessions and they want to say it's all that person, fix them and all will be well. And they're not really open to the counsellor saying, well, let's have a look at what you're doing to contribute to the situation. And Counsellor Margaret has said that hubby's quite open to the process. He wants to be a better person. He wants to be a loving husband. He wants to be a good dad. Yes, he's got inabilities to say what he's feeling inabilities to recognise that he's feeling something in the first place, let alone what's triggered it, and then how to say it. Lots of complex issues going on within him, in his mind anyway, because of his condition. But outside of his condition, he wants to be a likeable, nice, friendly person. And to be honest, he's always been a relatively caring and giving person. He's only ever really treated me crappily. And most of that's just anger, which I just wanted to nip in the bud. So it's been really good that he's been open to the process, and even the fact that he's now seeing Margaret by himself, because he's trying to delve into what's going on with him, which I think is kind of cool. And because she calls me in now and again, we're not in that counselling sort of, dynamic, where one person will go and see the counsellor and then give their side of the story, which is not accurate, and then they'll play the victim and talk about whatever else is going on, like my partner's really awful to me and yada yada yada, and the other partner isn't there to defend themselves or give their side of the story. And in that case, counselling isn't going to work, because she can then give that person advice, but if that person is giving them the wrong type of information, the advice that counsellor gives won't work, because it'll be incorrect. And with Counsellor Margaret, she calls me in every now and then for updates. How is he going? Is he improving? You know, has he been doing the homework I've been giving him? So she's been talking to him about bids for connection. And he'll say to her, for example, oh, my wife was really upset with me the other day because we had the TV on as background, but I started watching the TV and not listening to what she was saying, and then I got annoyed that she was talking and blah, 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 blah. And Counsellor Margaret says to him, oh, you see there, she was doing a bid for connection. She was reaching out with you, wanting to have a little bit of a conversation and, you know, connect. And so then he's thinking about that, going, oh, okay, yeah, I see that. So that's one of the things that she's really been talking to him about, and that's been helping, because he's been coming up and trying to have these bids of connection with me. I'll be doing something and he'll come up and ask me about what it is that I'm doing. So that's been also a bonus as well. And we did have a breakthrough. He had brought a pie home to heat up, and I hadn't heated it up for long enough. Needed to be 45 minutes, I'd only done 30, so it was kind of warm but not hottish enough. And when he sat down at the table, he took a bite and he said, it's not hot. And this moment of anger flashed in his face, and I recognised that anger, and I could feel that I was instantly in panic mode. Uh-oh, I'm about to be reamed out. And he just kind of counted for a moment and then said, but it still tastes good. Magic moment. Magic, magic, magic moment. And we talked to Counsellor Margaret about that. And this is her doing, this is what I mean. Her being frank with him, her being direct with him, her specifically concentrating on his anger, which was my number one majorest concern. Once he took all the critiquing away, which that did stop, then it was just the anger. And so she's now dealing with things from, I don't know, from the angle or the space or whatever where it actually needed to be tackled, instead of this surface stuff that a lot of counsellors were doing. So it's been really good. I've been really glad with how it's worked out. So anyway, over to you. Have you had successes with counsellors? And if so, please comment below. I would love to hear from you. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I really do appreciate it.